Hey guys, Punkrat with another video. So this video is going to be way different from my usual content. I'm going to keep it quite serious on this one. It's going to be also a long video, so please stay to the end because there's going to be a bit of a dramatic turn in this video, as well as a deeper point, which I think exemplifies exactly why Classic WoW is so special in the lineage of gaming. So in a lot of my videos, I put emphasis on the social aspect of vanilla servers, how servers feel like a home. Before Cross Realm and queuing up for dungeons on the dungeon tab was a thing, servers had really tight knit communities. It was also like it was kind of like a big high school, you know? You saw the same people every day, you made lasting friendships, there were cliques of toxic players trolling, casuals casualing, all kinds of different groups and people doing their thing, creating a social ecosystem for the server. I have a story I'd like to tell you guys. A long story about the history of World of Warcraft that very few people know, actually, of which involves one of the greatest guilds in the history of the game. This story isn't known by the greater public, but rather only a core player base on the server Medivh from back in Classic. When I was 12 years old, my brother was playing WoW on the Medivh server with his friend from high school. At first, I thought it was pretty dumb to spend so much time on a video game, but as I started to watch him play more and more, I got more and more curious. Eventually, I convinced my dad to set me up so I could join in. My brother was a level 44 druid. I created a mage named Aviatus and entered the world. I was running around leveling up in Elwyn Forest, and out from the trees came my brother, wearing the wolf mask Embrace of the Lycan from Zul'Farrak, the two-handed mace from Scarlet Monastery Cathedral Mograin's Might, the shoulders from RFD Fleshhide shoulder pads, or shoulders, riding a storm saber. I was in absolute awe. I was hooked ever since I saw that sight. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I wanted to be epic just like him. I started playing right around the time AQ40 was coming out. It was a glorious event, a race across all the North American servers as to who was going to get the AQ40 gates open first and claim the Scarab Lord title, the Scarab Lord mount, and get the first shot access to the newly released raid to push for world first progress. At the time, the server I was playing on, Medivh, was one of the most dominant PvE servers in the world. We claimed a large amount of world firsts. Manaroth, which was another server, another competitive server, was always trailing so closely behind us. The rivalry between Manaroth and Medivh was intense, palpable. We absolutely hated each other. This was more than just a race to opening the gate first. It was a fiery rivalry between the two monolithic classic servers of the time. A battle for bragging rights and glory. So before we talk about the rush to open the gates, let's go back a little bit and give a little history on the world firsts accomplished by the Medivh server. Medivh was a special place. The first major achievement by our server was actually by a Horde-side guild, which was surprising considering Medivh was a major alliance server. The first Ragnaros kill ever recorded in the history of World of Warcraft was by a guild called Ascent, a Horde-side guild on Medivh. After that feat, a guild called Fury, which was led by a legendary dwarf warrior who went by the name of Galahad, completely took the server by storm. Guilds in vanilla were incredibly hardcore. There were barely any add-ons at the time. People had crap computers. There was no data mining to figure out all the mechanics for a raid. And I mean, overall, the gaming community was way less experienced in general. This meant guilds would spend an incredible amount of time raiding and just smashing their faces into content, manually figuring out every little aspect of the raid in order to progress. It was super organic. Fury used to basically raid 7 days a week, and during World First races, it wasn't uncommon to log in during the early afternoon, slash who to see who was in Fury, what they were doing, see them in MC, BWL, AQ40, Nax, whatever was being progressed at the time, and then later on at night, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, slash who them again, and they would still be in the raid progressing. 7 days a week, almost all day raiding basically. It was insane in comparison to the 4-hour raid, 3-day a week schedules that's more common to see nowadays. So if we go through the world first lists back in vanilla, original vanilla, you'll see that the first Ragnaros kill ever recorded was by Ascent, which was a Horde guild from Medivh. Then if we go to Blackwing Lair, we'll see Broodlord, Lashlair, Fury, Ebenrock, Fury, Flamegore, Fury, Chromagus, Fury. In Temple, we see Prophet, Fury, Vem and Yaj Kree, Fury, Sartura, Fury, Fankris, Fury, Princess Huron, Fury. Then if we go down into Nax, they also picked up 2 over here. So they were a really special guild, and they got the most amount of world firsts on the list in all of vanilla. Fury got most of the world firsts in vanilla, period. Maybe they didn't get the final boss kills, but regardless of that fact, they have the largest amount of world firsts on the board, which is a fantastic achievement. On January 22nd, 2006, Medivh as a server achieved one of the greatest feats in World of Warcraft history. We as a server, Horde and Alliance combined, grouping together for a common cause, achieved the world first opening of the Ahn'Qiraj Gates. Galahad, the leader of Fury, was knighted with the first ever title of Scarab Lord in the history of WoW. I remember this whole event like it was yesterday, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to witness the actual opening of the gates in Silithus. See, Medivh opened the gates almost a week before the second opening, which was from Manaroth, our mortal enemies. Word got around, and this caused people from Manaroth and other realms to attempt to sabotage us. Hundreds, maybe 1,000 plus level 1 characters were storming our server in order to come and witness the gates in Silithus, or just to lag out the server as much as possible in order to hurt us from getting that monumental achievement. I remember having to give up. I couldn't log on during the opening of the gates for more than 1 second without unplayable lag. My computer just couldn't handle the stress of all the level 1s logging into our server. My brother had a slightly better computer, so I went in his room and we both logged on, walked a little bit with extreme lag, got disconnected over and over and over again, logged back on, moved a little bit, got disconnected. We did this for hours. Unfortunately, we only got to the wetlands boat after hours of doing this and missed the actual gate opening. So if we go on the server wiki for Medivh US, you'll see here that it was one of the original, I think 11 servers, maybe I got that number wrong, something like that. It was like 9, 10, 11 servers that actually launched with the game release in 2004. And over here it goes over the overview based on what I was talking about, Ascent claiming the world first Ragnaros kill, and then how Fury completely took over after that. Talking about the gates of Ahn'Qiraj, where Fury and Ascent worked together in order to get it. And how Galahad was the first person to get the Scepter of the Shifting Sands to unlock the gate and claim Scarab Lord, and how that led to them getting a bunch of world firsts in AQ40. And then here it's going to talk about the overpopulation of the server. It was a massive server, and talking about how the recurrent lag spikes and high latency, because we were still using the original release hardware on that server specifically, led to, you know, a bunch of pains when it came to getting world firsts. And then over here it talks about the feud with Manaroth, which is something that I kept mentioning, and how we were constantly at each other's necks and going on each other's servers. See here, players from Medivh and Manaroth created alts on opposing servers to increase lag and queue times. So that's the level 1s that I was talking about while we were trying to log in. And you know, players also trolled on forums, trading insults like Care Bear and Manaroth. Like, I remember Manaroth so well. And yeah, eventually how Medivh emerged victorious through that. This event only made things worse between Medivh and Manaroth. They unleashed a storm of hate posts on our forum board following that day. They kept calling us Care Bears because we were a PvE server and it was easier for us to work with Horde in order to get that gate open. However, we got the last laugh because we picked up a bunch of world firsts in AQ40 due to that fact, opened the gates first, and I mean, that's really what's going to be remembered at the end of the day. Later on in the Shadow of Necropolis patch, or the Nax patch, Fury managed to eke out another 2 world firsts, one on Instructor Resuvius and one on Gothic the Harvester. During this time, Death and Taxes and Nihilum really started to ramp up, and it seemed as though the era of Fury had been coming to an end. Unfortunately, this decline on the world first stage was foreshadowing to what was to come. Fury was led by Galahad and Leia, as I stated earlier. They were a dynamic duo that went everywhere together. They were always together in-game, and one day, something truly tragic happened. In late 2006, early 2007, Leia unfortunately passed away. It was a huge event on the server. Fury was the heart and soul of Medivh. Medivh without Fury wasn't Medivh. And after Leia had died, Galahad tried to keep things going for a while, but it just wasn't the same. The Fury era was officially over. Shortly after Fury died out, the server itself seemed to fizzle. Big guilds started to break up, started to transfer off. the level of competition on the server just started to die down, and people started to re-roll on bigger servers. And eventually, Medivh just became another random server, forever forgotten in the eyes of most people who don't know its history. But to those who were there in vanilla, will always remember the significance of Medivh and its impact on WoW. There was a massive forum post on the original Medivh forums, the old school WoW forums. I was unable to find that post since everything has been revamped and it's seemingly been lost in the ether. There was a huge post when Leia died. It was actually a tragic event for the whole server. Like, even if you weren't in Fury, everybody knew each other on Medivh, and to see someone who was so integral in the world first achievements of our server and in just bringing our server to prominence pass away in such a random manner was really harsh. I mean, I just remember that forum post and all kinds of, it had so many pages of people just grieving and wishing their condolences. It was really sad, and it was sad how it affected the server as a whole. What I did surprisingly find was a post on the modern WoW forums of Medivh from Leia's son, surprisingly enough, who at the time was 26, if you read his post here. I'll read the post. So if we quickly go over this, the forum post that he made was called "Looking for Info About Fury on Medivh and Leia." So he says, "Hey there, I'm not actually a WoW player at all, but I'm on a bit of an information hunt about the activities of a certain clan and a player from 04 to 07 era of the US Medivh realm. I'm considering posting there as well, but I'll give this a first shot. So my mother, who passed away in May 2007, played as, I believe, a night elf priest called Leia. When she was deeply into her gaming habits, I was a teenager, so I didn't concern myself with what she was doing at all. But now as an adult, I'm 26 and an avid gamer, I find myself incredibly curious about why she spent so much time in WoW, and especially with her guild Fury. I've pieced together all I could from random internet searches, old forum posts, but thanks to her computer, characters, and data all being long gone, I find myself at a dead end for further information. So that's why I'm here. If you have any info, anecdotes, memories at all, anything relating to this clan, my mother, and their activities or accomplishments, please let me know. My mother spent more time in games than she did with her real life friends and family towards the end of her life, and years later I find myself truly fascinated by the idea that there's a wealth of knowledge about my mother as a gamer out there somewhere, but it only exists in the memories of her online friends and former guild members. Thank you in advance." So, I mean, this really touches the heart. This is her son that lost his mother way too early, and you think about the real life impact of these things. So this young man had been seeking to get to know his mom from her gaming history. He mentions Galahad, he mentions Fury, wanting to know the story of Fury. And as a young boy growing up in Azeroth, growing up on the realm of Medivh, I idolized Fury. So I can connect with this. I mean, with such stars in my eyes, I idolized Fury. They used to always hang out as a little clique right in this spot in Ironforge, just in a little circle here. Every single night they were there. I remember, Musi, Vive, Galahad, Leia, Ryan Oski, to name a few. They were just an awesome crew. I remember being this annoying little 12, 13-year-old kid that would always come in and try to ask them questions about Nax and what was going on with the world first, etc., etc. I remember Galahad and Leia always being so nice to me, treating me with respect and engaging in conversations with me. There was such a great social dynamic on Medivh that you don't see anymore in World of Warcraft. I'll never forget that. They weren't your typical elitist jerks. They were awesome, and they inspired me to be great at whatever I wanted to do in life. And as corny as that sounds, and regardless of who they were, what the significance of a World of Warcraft achievement, the Guild Fury, it exemplified greatness. Despite all their numerous accomplishments, Fury never really got the same name recognition, notoriety as guilds like Nihilum, Vodka, Death and Taxes, you name it. It's almost as if they've been forgotten because of how undeveloped the WoW community and internet was back in those days. There's not really much video reference of them at all. But regardless of that fact, they'll always be one of the most incredible guilds in the history of the game. And they have a really unique and tragic story which brought them to the end of their run as a guild, which is a story that really isn't told at all. It's a story that I find greatly exemplifies how tightly knit and organic server-wide communities were back in the day before fast rerolling, cross-server transfers, cross-realming, server connections, ruined all of those aspects of the game. It's really crazy how one person passing away basically gutted the entire server going forward. This is a story that pretty much only Medivh veterans know of. And if any of you guys played on Medivh back like 15 years ago, it's crazy, 15 years ago, I'd love to hear from you guys. I have so many fond memories growing up on that special server. I hope you guys enjoyed Storytime today. This is one, it's a piece that I really enjoyed working on. It was really awesome. Subscribe to the channel if you guys want to see more videos, support my channel. Leave a comment if you want. I read every single one of them, and I'd love to hear from some of you guys that may have played on Medivh and know about this story. And lastly, this is dedicated to the memory of Leia. May she rest in peace, and to the memory of all the old school Medivh players and Fury specifically. So with that said, thanks for watching.